season that seems like.
Last time out in sunny Portugal, the weather played the deciding role in the outcome of the race and provided the opportunity for heroic drives from Koiza, Luca Riccitelli, Vincent Voss and Peter Hardman. As Oiza and Riccitelli raced forwards from their back row start, Voss and Hardman went on in turn one and rejoined from last to do exactly the same, but the yellow flags were waving, the safety car was out on track, and soon after that, the red flag brought the subject proceedings to a premature end after only a handful of racing laps had been completed. The rain continued and the officials took the only decision possible, bringing the race to a complete halt. And that meant that Lister took its second win ahead of the two Belmondo cars, the top six finishers being awarded half points for half an hour of racing, and the championship positions remaining fairly static as a result. It was the same story in NGT. With their podium, also a virtual copy of the previous race, other than Riccitelli's amazing charge to second place, the championship is fairly static here too, and they also collect only half the weight penalty for their success. Now we're well into the championship's 10-round calendar, with the first two races already completed. After round 3 at Monza, the calendar's oldest racetrack, there are still some of the greatest circuits in Europe to be visited, including trips to Silverstone and to Brno in the Czech Republic. 80 years of history surround us now as the teams gather below the banking of the old Grand Prix circuit at Monza. Long, fast straight, that's what Monza is all about, and this is the longest and fastest. An endless blast past the pits, beyond the start of the old banking off to the right, and then braking very late and hard to get through the first of the 3 chicanes. The prima variante of Retrofilio is difficult, left-right and left-right. A curve-hopping complexity that's easy to get wrong, but a good exit is vital as you accelerate away towards the first of Monza's fast sweepers, the apparently endless Curva Grande. Now you're on another long straight, but just at the edge of visibility is the second chicane, the Variante della Rossia. And again, you have to be precise here, because you come out of this one ready for the 2 tight straights at Lesmo. Now it's the second of these that you need to be perfect on, because you need to carry as much speed as you can out onto another massively long straight. Perfect through here, slow in, fast out on the gas. The track now curves to the right very gently and skips rather more sharply as it goes under the concrete banking of the old Grand Prix circuit. There it is, going past above us, and now you're looking at the third and final chicane at Ascari. It's the combination of high speed and sudden chicanes that makes life hard on the brakes, and the abrasive surface isn't trying to tire us here either. Hard on the brakes, then left, curve right and left, and accelerate hard, much faster in the dry, out onto the last straight, all the way up through the gears again as the speed builds up and you arrive at the final corner, all of a rush. This is Parabolica, the endless 180 right that starts tight and opens out, that goes on for so long it feels as if the angle's getting sharper, but you can stay on the gas all the way round and you need to, because it fires you out onto the longest front straight on the calendar, with the next braking point a kilometre away. More than 2 minutes in the wet, round about 1:45, 1:47 on a dry surface, and who knows what it's going to be on race day. Those people who ran well in first qualifying were the lucky ones. The predicted rain arrived overnight, and if the morning session was wet, the afternoon session was drowned, and only 6 of the 37 starters improved their time in the afternoon outing. It must have been worse for the teams appearing here for the first time, most of them equipped with pretty Ferraris. Among them was one team that included Ivan Capelli, who drove in Formula 1 for Maranello with Jean Alesi back in 1992.
It's a great experience because I saw many times the race from outside. Now I can see this race from inside. I can see there are a lot of competitors, a lot of good competitors and good cars.
On a grid largely unchanged by the second session, one person who did improve was Luca Riccitelli, the wet weather hero from Estoril, who nicked the NGT pole by 0.02 of a second after a spectacular drive in appalling conditions. First Racing, returning here, had the same problem that put them out in Valencia, a broken water pump drive belt and therefore overheating. They also had a sticky throttle that left the pedal flat to the floor. Not nice in the wet, said Delatraz. Lister weren't on pole nor even on the front row of this grid, surprising at this circuit, which ought to have suited the car well enough. On board now is Peter Hardman in the number 15 car, and you can see just how difficult conditions are, or it's not easy. Now you know what a letter must feel like after it's just been posted. Kent quickest with all the number 15 car did manage, 2:04 in the morning session, 15 seconds slower than it had run 24 hours earlier. Fourth fastest in qualifying after a dominant pole in the only dry session, which was regrettably free practice, was a little strange for the Lister, but the problem was apparently not with the extra 60 kilos of ballast bolted to the floor, the success penalty awarded for the twin victories in Valencia and then again at Estoril.
Well, obviously it makes it slower because, you know, 60 kilos accelerating and decelerating and cooling is going to be hard. It's like having someone like my weight as a passenger, basically, and it slows the car down. But percentage-wise, it's not a great deal, but it does slow the car down, and that's the point, you know, to try and make the championship more competitive. But I'd rather not have it.
With a 45 kilo penalty and a braking problem in the first and driest session, Paul Belmondo and Vincent Ross were quite pleased with what ended up as the third quickest qualifying time of the weekend and a starting position from the second row of the Monza grid.
Well, for sure the torque of the engine of the Chrysler it's a good thing in the wet, but well, I think the Lister can be also a good car if the setup they choose before the race is good.
The rain worked a miracle for Freisinger, the first time this year that a Porsche was anywhere near the sharp end, but in the dry they couldn't expect to be up among the Listers and the Vipers, especially not at a track like Monza.
We know that we are good in wet condition, but in wet condition it's not really the performance of the car, it's more the driver who's doing that things, and in dry condition we will see what's going on. I mean, I hope we can close the gap what we had in the last races there between the Viper and between the Viper and the Lister. So I hope we can do a good race and for everybody.
Pole position went to the Carsport Holland team. Their best time was set in the morning, of course, but Mike Hazeman was still pleased with the amount of grip available to the ex-Orica Viper in the wet conditions. Although, take a look, it's not so much qualifying as boating, and that could make the race highly unpredictable.
In the rain, I think for sure. In the dry, I think they are equal. I also know it's dry, it's a long race, you cannot tell. It's difficult. A lot of cars overtaking, and so maybe it starts raining or dry, you know, so it's always difficult to win.
Saturday afternoon was a disaster for Chamberlain, not to mention Kreisinger. Javier Pompidou lost it under brakes at Ascari. He did well to keep it off the Armco, but made an innocent victim of Yukihiro Hane, although the 911 looked a lot more repairable than the Viper. The forecast for Northern Italy on Sunday said overcast, but didn't mention rain. Overcast is what we got, and everybody held their breath. And rightly so, because this was more than a question of bruised tyres and softer suspension. Some of the pit lane gamblers had already changed gearbox ratios in anticipation of the higher speeds a dry race would mean, and they'd be completely wrong-footed if they'd guessed wrong. As the pit lane opened and the grid began to form up, you could easily tell who they were. They were the ones pacing up and down more anxiously than most. Probably because morning warm-ups had proved the wisdom of their decision. But that wisdom would only last for as long as the weather held, the wind continued to blow gently, and the tarmac continued to dry out. Still dry as the formation lap begins. A good moment to recall that in the only dry practice on Friday morning, no less than 32 of the 37 starters had been below 1 minute 57. The top 10 were all below 150, and Julian Bailey's quick time was 1:47.0. And at those sort of speeds, this will be the first race this year to be stopped at 500 kilometres. That's 87 laps of Monza's 5.7 kilometre layout. At warm-up speeds, it'll be 2 hours 50, but at Friday's pace, this will only go a little way past 2.5 hours. That means high fuel consumption, high rates of wear for tyres and brakes, early fuel stops, and last-minute splash and dash. This one will be a game of strategy, of chance and luck for all the teams, the drivers, the crews and the managers. This one is what it's all about, and it's almost time to go racing. So remember that the times here were all set in the wet, and times from the morning warm-up might be more relevant. In race trim on a dry track, Hazelman was still quickest, 1:54, compared to Bailey's 54.6. Low 55s for Paul Belmondo and Yukihiro Hane with the miraculously repaired Kreisinger Porsche, and high 55s for the second lister and the surviving Chamberlain car. Row 4 would have been de Richebourg and Charrier, both Vipers, both 57s, and then right at the back, row 5 would have been the third Belmondo Viper, and that first racing 550 Maranello, which did extremely well. That's not how it is, but it makes no difference anyway. There were more problems for the first racing team this weekend, and that oh-so-pretty Ferrari Maranello will take the start from the pit lane this afternoon. So, 500 kilometres, or 3 hours, the race distance. It'll be a checkered flag at 500 k's in the dry, and 2 full pit stops, perhaps a final stint running to the computer, or a flat-out run for a third stop, a real quickie, just a splash and dash. The team managers will have the various plots mapped out. They'll also have prepared an alternate, so they'll know what to do if it rains, won't they? Difficult one this, a lot to play for, a lot to gamble for. This is what endurance racing is all about, and this race promises to be a classic. We're certainly in the right place for it. Monza is a classic layout. This track provides the best for all the cars and all the drivers on board, with Vincent Voss now in the Belmondo car in third place, behind that red Viper of Mike Hazelman, as we wait for the signal from Roland Brunderreiter that says this race is a goer, and we are off. Down goes that right foot and away go the Vipers, and look at Kaufmann in that number 3 Porsche clinging desperately to that front row slot as they head down towards the Prima Variante. Hazelman leads it, Kaufmann is second, Bailey is third, then it's Voss, then de Richebourg, then Koreuser in the big Marcos. On board now with Jürgen von Gartzen in the Conrad car, going round the Curva Grande. Looking at the rest of the field, starting to pull away from him already. Hageman still in control. A little bit of place swapping going on behind him. You can see them juggling, but we're on cold tyres, still on fairly cold engines, and they won't really get into the groove until half a lap or maybe a little bit further. Long lap too, remember, so plenty of opportunity to get into the groove. High speeds, tyres warm up quickly. You can see though that track is still damp. Still nose to tail as well. This bodes well. It's close racing still. There's Luca Ricciardelli, the man who's so quick in the wet at Estoril, so quick in qualifying. Be one of the few people that actually improved his grid time in the appalling rain of Saturday afternoon. Hageman leads it. Hamburger is behind him in the number 3 car. Julian Bailey behind that. Vincent Voss, Boris de Richford, Peter Hartmann, Tony Seiler in the surviving Chamberlain car, and then Jarrier in that number 29 Viper with its extraordinary livery and painted on. Jürgen von Gartzen, we've been on board with him, and alongside the Marcos comes Tony Seiler, takes the plate. There is the Jarrier car, number 29, getting past Matty Utzi in the racing box. Viper back on board with Jürgen von Gartzen, starting the second lap. Still damp, you can see that this track is definitely dry, and it looks as though it's going to stay dry. Into the chicane, hard on the brakes. This is really tough on brakes. Coming down from top speed, right down through the gearbox, very slow through the chicane. 2 goes at this one, remember, goes left, right, and those NGT cars hopping across the curbs, back on board in the number 5 car, the Conrad GT2 Porsche, really at the limit of development now. Hageman in the Viper, in front and apparently in control. There's the second of the Vipers, and there's the Chamberlain. Oh, the touch! Oh, and into the arm goes very hard, goes the Marcos. Mattiuzzi spins and collects the pack with an unlucky number 4 frightening car. Well, that clearly wasn't the fault of Harold Becker in the Marcos. And quite what happened there, hard to see, but they definitely touched, and he was prodded fairly unkindly from behind. And that Marcos is going nowhere. It's going to look as if the Viper is going. That tells you everything. Well, good job we can't hear him, otherwise we'd have to censor this. Becker clearly unhappy with that, cannot believe what has just happened to his race on lap 2. Here it is again on board with Jürgen von Gartzen. The brake lights going on as they go on towards the chicane, but long before Becker had touched the brakes, there's bits of car all over the place. And as we saw, that number 4 Porsche of Hamburger also caught up in it. Here it is again, just poked up the boots and into the Armco, bodywork everywhere. Mattiuzzi very nearly got away with it, but Hamburger didn't stand a chance, and he is almost certainly out of this one as well. That's poor reward for a team that stayed up until 3 or 4 o'clock this morning trying to repair that number 4 car to have it knocked out on lap 2. Absolute rotten luck. We're back with the leaders, Hageman from Hamburger, Julian Bailey, Vincent Voss, Boris de Richford, then Peter Hartmann in the second of the listers. And there's Hamburger trying to get back to the pits with what looks like half a car. Unlikely that they can do much with that. Almost certainly the geometry is out. There's definitely nothing you can do with either of those. And at least they're being polite to each other. But you can see that Becker doesn't think it was his fault. And you can see that Matty thinks that he was weaving about on the straight. Well, he wasn't really. Terrible bad luck for Marcos as well, just when things were going so well for them. Hageman braking late with the Porsche right behind him, pushing hard. In comes his teammates. They're ready to do what they can, but that one, I think, is destined for the pit box and no further. Hageman still leads it. Kaufman in the number 3 Porsche, still behind him on a track that obviously suits the Vipers very well as Bailey comes under attack. We're on board with his teammates. Hartmann in the number 15 car, following behind the Vipers, looking for a way past. There isn't it. Oh, they touch, and these two are off as well. To Rishford, helped off by the lister. Look at it again now, on board with Harman. There simply isn't room here, and Boris Derishko becomes the second man this weekend to be poked very rudely from behind. Here it comes. There's not a gap here, but in goes the Lister anyway. 2 wheels on the grass, touches the Viper, and off they both go. Race leader Hazeman enjoying a quiet life up front, were he not being persecuted at the moment by Wolfgang Kaufmann, who's doing exceptionally well in a Porsche which seems very, very much better shape now than it was 2 weekends ago at Estoril. Really bang on the pace and looking very good indeed. Oil flag out, there's debris on the ground here from the little contretemps with the Marcos and the Racing Box Viper. Hazeman, Kaufmann, Viper and Porsche. We haven't heard that for a long time, nor have we seen a Porsche look quite so threatening. And that is Jürgen von Gartzen, and he's parked it. There's something not quite right there. It's not really as it should be, and it seems to be all over for the Conrad car. Hazeman with the Porsche still in tow, and Julian Bailey in the Lister, the number 14 car, still there in 3rd place, and I think beginning to close in. They're certainly drawing away from the number 12 Belmondo car. Behind that there's a gap where the number 11 car used to be, and then there is the number 15 Lister, slightly damaged but still continuing. Coming up onto the front straight from Parabolica. Endless front straight. All the way up through the gearbox, flat out, heading towards the chicane. And Hazeman in the Car Sport Holland car, looking very comfortable in the lead. And the Viper riding the curves very nicely. The Porsche gets a little bit of lift and almost takes flight. But this is looking very good indeed for Hazeman. He's looked threatening ever since the team arrived with this ex-Orica car, ex-Orica engineer as well, and he really is working it hard. I think Wolfgang Kaufmann is losing touch. It's certainly true that Julian Bailey appears to be getting closer. Vincent Voss in 4th place, hanging on in there, but slightly further back, I think, than he was before. The race hardly got into its stride yet. We've had lots and lots of drama already. And it's now settling down to a scrap at the front between these three, because the Belmondo car is definitely dropping away. But Hazeman in the lead. Here's the NGT leader, Luca Riccitelli, going as well in the dry at Monza as he did in the rain at Estoril. Hardly 5 laps into an expected distance of 87, and Julian Bailey is struggling to catch up with second place Wolfgang Kaufmann in the Freilinger Porsche, who's currently second to race leader and pole man Mike Hazeman in the Car Sport Holland Viper. Bailey a lot closer now and starting to appear threatening. That's a big, ugly thing to have in your mirrors, and he's showing it to Kaufmann every chance he gets. Very difficult to concentrate now for Kaufmann. He's got to drive his line and try and stay out of the Lister's grasp. There's the leader of NGT, Luca Riccitelli. Ran well in Estoril from the back of the grid to be second by the time the race was brought to that premature close. Now looking very confident, very poised, and very well set for a good result here. Barring this, here comes Julian Bailey again, threatening on the front straight to go past, but they're in traffic and the Lister can't use its speed. Kaufmann hangs onto it into the chicane, where the Porsche is at least as agile as that very well balanced Lister. That's its real strength here. The long straight suits the Viper very well, but in the chicanes the Lister is king, definitely. has to be boosted with lead to bring it up to the minimum weight to start with. A very well balanced car all round. A pleasure to drive, say Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell-Walter. But the Porsche just a little bit smaller and perhaps a little bit nimbler. Hageman in the Viper, picking his way through the tail enders. Bailey waiting for his opening, looking for an opportunity. Remember that he is carrying 60 kilos of ballast, which is the equivalent to a fair-sized human being. So it's almost as if it's got a passenger on board. That's the penalty for wins in the opening 2 rounds. So perhaps not as handy as it might have been. Not so quick to accelerate. Has to brake a little bit sooner. Just a little bit heavier in the turns. But the astonishing rejuvenation of the Porsche continues for Wolfgang Kaufmann and the Freisinger team. New engine fitted to the car this weekend. That seems to have done... Oh, that's a disappointment. Out goes the first racing Maranello. The race hardly getting into its stride, and it's parked it. This is the battle for second place in NGT, and we'll say battle with a capital B. This is a scrap indeed. Tim Sugden in the MK GTC car, just being passed by Michel Neugaard. He got caught out in Estoril. He was biding his time for a 3-hour race. When the flag dropped, he wasn't really ready, nor was he where he wanted to be. Going to set the balance straight this weekend, they hope. And now, just, oh dear, nursing the Porsche through the turns, and here we are in turn 1, and number 60 in the gravel there. Looks to me as if it is beat and isn't going anywhere. Julian Bailey still persecuting Wolfgang Kaufmann, but not really making much of an impression. Kaufmann tried it on with Hageman earlier on. He's had to let that one go and settle for defending himself at the moment. And that always slows you up. And of course it slows up the man behind you if he can't find room to get past. The fact that you're driving a defensive line takes a little edge off your lap times, and the danger for both of them is that Hageman will be getting away. Here's Vincent Voss with another big lister behind him. Well, that's the scars left by the number 11 car as it was helped aside in Parabolica by Peter Hardman. And doubtless Vincent Voss will be very keenly aware of that as he studies it in his mirrors. Well, the other thing that can happen when somebody's chasing you hard from behind is that you carry that fight forwards, and it may well be that Kaufmann, being pressured by Bailey, is closing on Hageman. Forced to put on speed. Remember, fuel consumption is going to be an issue here on board with Vincent Voss. As the lister gets through cleanly, no mistake here. Little bit of tail end slide there as he gets on the gas, but a nice clean pass this time. Remember, fuel consumption will be an issue. Everybody here trying to drive to a plan, but if they're obliged to drive harder, then all the pit stop strategy has to be readjusted as a result. In among the NGTs are your race leaders. 25, it's Mike Hageman. Second place, 3, Wolfgang Kaufmann. Third place, 14, Julian Bailey in the lister. Hageman on the right of the picture. In the big red Viper, Carport Holland. There's the Freisinger Porsche. Here comes Julian Bailey up the inside. This surely must be his pass. And Kaufmann stands aside and lets him go. Nothing to be done about that. And so the lister up into second place. And the question now is, can he catch Mike Hageman? Well, it's a question that Mike Hageman will want to know the answer to, but preferably not until the end of the race. Through the chicane, Kaufmann still there, following the lister. They have stayed pretty close together, the top 3. It's been a race right from the beginning between these 3. Hageman so far hasn't really been challenged. We're back on board in the Belmondo Viper. We've seen Hardman go past. There he is in front as we hop the curbs at Retifilo. On the gas now, heading out towards Curva Grande. There's the NGT leader still in the clear. Blue flags waving, but I don't think but Michel Neugarten needs to be told that Tim Sutton would like to overtake him. I think he knows that already. He's known it for quite some time. This has been going on, this scrap, and there is little to choose between them. There's not much air between them either, and they've fought their way through the traffic and still stayed together. And this is absolutely classic stuff. This is really what NGT was conceived for. This is why those cars are there. And this is really what Mike Hazelman was bothered about. The Lister is now closing in. Definitely it is getting closer. This is the number 9 Porsche. Luca Cataneo in the pits early. Remember, the stop will come before the hour, probably 50 minutes, maybe even 45, depending on the pace of the race. And this one's running flat out up front. And it's going flat out in NGT as well. So expect early pit stops and expect a splash and dash at the end for almost everybody except the NGT cars. Hazelman under lots of pressure now, being pushed from behind, not literally in this case, which makes a change for today. And here comes the Lister now alongside as they come out of Parabolica. Bailey's on the gas hard. The Viper's got the speed. Bailey hopes he's got the drive. He's got the line for the chicane. They've got traffic. The Ferraris are staying out of the way. And it looks like the Lister is through. Hazelman has lost it. And Julian Bailey has got the lead. A perfectly executed pass. He knew the Viper was quicker on the front straight, but he got the push out of Parabolica, used the Lister's balance in the corner to get the gas down hard, and you saw the way Peter Harmon's tail end was twitching, or rather his car's was, earlier on when he tried the same sort of thing going past the Belmondo car. So you know what a fine piece of work that was from Julian Bailey, especially with all that success ballast on board. Really pulled off a fine pass to grab the lead, and now what he wants to do is consolidate, get away, ease away from Mike Hazelman in the Viper if he can, and then start to think about fuel consumption and taking it gently. Jürgen von Gartzen has obviously got going and is bringing the Conrad Porsche home to the pits, possibly to retire. He's been stationary for a while, he's got it fired up again, but it looks as though their race weekend could well be over. Stops outside the pits, and now the consultation begins. What exactly was the problem there? 2 leaders in one picture. Richard Kelly coming towards you, leads NGT. Behind him, the headlights reflecting on the tarmac, is the leader of GT and the overall leader. That's Julian Bailey, about to lap the NGT leader as he comes down the front straight past the pit board that tells him he's still in front, because the other two are still quite busy behind him. Now the Lister is going to move on and pass that very shortly, perhaps at the end of this coming lap. That front straight saw the gap halved as the Lister used its speed. But we've seen how handy the Porsches are in the pit. That's Cataday's Porsche though, in the box. An engine problem for him and retirement on this Sunday afternoon. They're still at it. Neugarten and Sugden still tied together by a very short piece of string, hopping over the curbs and driving these things to their absolute limit, really giving it everything. There is, oh, and here comes Sugden now, thinks this could be his moment, draws alongside. Neugarten's got the line as they break for the turn, door handle to door handle. Gentlemen racers at race. This is very polite stuff, right on the edge, right on the limit, but oh, that's very much on the limit. Nico Vian has hit the Armco at Rettifilo very hard indeed, the end of his afternoon. And you can see he can't even get out for that side. A crane will be employed, and that will be parked safely to one side. But it's all over for them, as you can see. He's very annoyed with himself. Just done a stop-go penalty for hopping over the chicane. Those two still doing it. Side by side now. Sugden still in second place. Michel Neugarten still in the lead. They're about to be passed by Peter Harmon in the Lister, back from 5th place I think, so they're losing ground to the front runners, but nevertheless enjoying their own private and very intense battle and providing the rest of us with some very good entertainment on this Sunday afternoon as this race continues to throw up drama. This is lap 25, less than 1/3 of the full race distance and the scheduled fuel stop have already begun. The number 3 Porsche of Wolfgang Kaufmann, which has been holding an excellent third place, has already been in tyres and gas and a change of driver. And now in comes Vincent Ross from what had just become 4th place as a result of the Freisinger pit stop. They'll almost certainly be changing tyres. Monza very abrasive and very hard on tyres. And so fuel in first, driver swap as Paul Belmondo gets in, Vincent Ross comes out. Tyres are ready. And that is the number 15 Lister coming to a halt. Well, he was dodging from side to side, trying to slosh the fuel around. If there is any, it's run dry. He's not going to make it round the last lap before his fuel stop, and the strategy, you can see, running on a knife edge has just gone wrong. When the race is run at intense pace, then the consumption is slightly more than you think it is. This can be the result. You live on the knife edge and the price is failure, and Peter Harman has run out of fuel. And there's Nicholas Springer waiting to get in, but he won't be getting in because the car is not coming. It's stopped out on the track and it's just not going to happen. In comes the teammate though. This is Julian Bailey stopping from the lead as these two continue their scrap up front. Moving towards the front of the overall leaderboard as well, because the pit stops are going to change everything. The NGT cars will stop later, may even stop only once depending on their consumption and strategy. So Julian Bailey swapping over while the other car is pushed aside. Julian Bailey hands the number 14 car over to Jamie Campbell-Walter. Got to be a quick stop for the Lister crew. Hazemans has handed over to David Hart and the Viper is already out. There goes the Lister. Well, it looks as though the positions have changed in the pit stop. There's only seconds in it, but there was only seconds in it before. They came in together, they come out not quite together. This is the gap. We've just seen the Viper go past. Here comes the Lister. It's getting on for 10 seconds. This is not good. This is not going to plan. This is not what the strategy required. They've lost the lead in the pit stops and they've got a lot of work to do to catch up with Hageman, as Sugden again has a stab at Neugarten, and once again you see how polite and well behaved they have been, even though they've been at it like knives all the way through this race. Well, look how quickly this has happened. Jamie Campbell-Walter has gallered up David Hart very quickly indeed. The Red Viper in the lead. We saw the gap, maybe 8 seconds when they came out of the pits, but now, as you can see, Campbell-Walter right on the tail and looking for his opportunity to get back what should be the lead. Looking for the way past, here it is, into Parabolica, and they've done it again. They've touched the third time we've seen it. Comparatively gentle stuff this time. Advantage to Jamie Campbell-Walter, and there goes the number 3 car. Bob Wallach in the Freisinger Porsche has just grabbed the lead. Jamie Campbell-Walter gets second place, and David Hart hangs on to third. But drama again in this race as the lead changes hands, and again changes hands because of a little bit of a touch in Parabolica. Well, it's all been happening today. Here it is again. The Lister comes out, looks for the gap. David Hart shuts the door. They touch. The Viper spins and the Lister manages just to stay out of trouble. Racing incident, very difficult to call it from here and impossible to lay the blame. NGT leader in the pits. A late first stop. Luca Riccitelli has done an excellent job in the first stint and hands over now to Willems. See them swapping places. Here is Bob Wallach, brilliant Bob, in the lead of this race at Monza, but not for much longer because Jamie Campbell-Walter just nipped through on the inside of Parabolica. Bob Wallach was watching Walter Brun in the Chamberlain car and looked through, went the Lister. Now, look, starting to pull out the lead already as they go down the front straight. Neat piece of work from Jamie Campbell-Walter. And Bob Wallach will doubtless be cursing himself. There's third place, David Hart. Apparently unscathed after that little moment at Parabolica, but the lead really settled then. He's a long way down on the Lister. This is the Jean-Pierre Jarier and Michel Lafon Viper making its appearance here for the first time this year. Expect to see it again a couple of times as the season goes by. Number 29. And number 12, of course, the Belmondo Viper, now handled by Paul Belmondo after the pit stops. And this is another scheduled stop for the Freisinger car. Bob Wallach hands over to Wolfgang Kaufmann. Wolfgang Kaufmann will probably finish the race. They'll come in for another stop. Depending on the fuel consumption, it'll be a splash and dash, and the driver will stay in the car almost certainly. There is your NGT leader. That's all changing NGT, running to different strategies. That is Nigel Smith. Michel Neugarten has handed over, and they've come out in front of the number 77 car, which Luca Riccitelli had kept in the lead until the pit stop. It's all changing NGT as well. And that pit stop strategy has separated that battle that was going on between Michel Neugarten and Tim Sundgren. And through into second place goes David Hart. You just saw him slide past the number 3 Porsche out of the pits. It has come looking to hang on to its position, but through went the Viper. In traffic, of course. And again, oh dear, that is was the second of the Belmondo cars, now being towed out of the gravel, having gone in fairly solidly. So just one Belmondo car left in the race somewhere. That is the number 10 car. And after a good start in the opening 2 races, it's disappointment at Monza. I don't think David Hart needs to be told about the presence of... Oh, right over the curb. That is very bad news indeed. Took a bit too much curb there. Launched the Viper. Bounced it. Appleton rattled his teeth. And while he's gathering himself up, he's sorting himself out in the cockpit, the Freisinger car has nipped through and grabbed the plate. Here it is again. Outbraked himself really, dealing with the traffic. This is the moment, takes a huge lump of the curb and launches the Viper. Somehow or other manages to collect it all back again and carry on safely. Well, that's what I would have done as well. And here is the Freisinger car really charging now, lighting up the tyres under braking. Wolfgang Kaufmann pushing very, very hard indeed, making the most of the Viper's early pit stop. Perhaps it's not early, but immediately after that incident at the first chicane, into the pits it comes. No point taking chances, best to have it looked at. It did really take a big lump of curb, and it landed very hard indeed. David Hart did very well to collect it all up and carry on. Brings it back, hands it over to Mike Hazelman for the final stint of the race. And in the pits for a regular stop, the NGT leader, the number 77 car, has retired with a broken drive shaft, so that's defused the scrap in NGT quite a bit now. Michel Neugarten takes over as the Lister's brakes stroke fairly heavily, evidence of how hard they are working here, hauling it down for high speed. Out goes the NGT leader. I've never seen Lauren Pierce looking that relaxed in a pit stop ever before. So everything under control at Lister as the number 14 car goes back out with Julian Bailey at the wheel. Well, everything running according to plan, and a little bit of dust in the chicane. Somebody else has taken a big bit of curve here. This is the Chamberlain car, running like clockwork, going exactly to strategy at the moment. Whether it will prove to be the one that takes it to the podium or not remains to be seen. The aim was a place in the top 6, and it's on course for that at the moment, currently in 4th position. Race leader Julian Bailey currently in 1st position, obviously enough, and on his way to what looks like a 3rd consecutive victory for Lister. That's retirement for Robert Nairn, and that cloud of smoke at the back end tells you it's an engine problem that has brought him into the pits, and the little oil trail behind you tells you just how bad an engine problem that was. No problem anymore. It was trail and smoke division, and that's lost a wheel. Well, it's just come out of its pit stop. That is the sole surviving Belmondo car, and after a brilliant start to the season, they are having a miserable weekend here at Monza, and there is the missing ingredient. And quite clearly that did not stay on after the pit stop. So a problem with the locking nut perhaps, but either way, disaster for Belmondo this weekend. That really will have hammered their championship challenge when they were running neck and neck with the Lister squad in the team's championship. The Lister, meanwhile, is galloping away, or has been galloping away from Hazeman, but Hazeman has been just edging a second a lap or so, and has now started to take bigger chunks out of Julian Bailey, and whether that means Bailey's running to the fuel computer, or perhaps has just got a little bit of a problem with tyres or brakes, remains to be seen. He's still in the lead. All the time he's in the lead, he's in charge. Hazeman is definitely getting closer, and that can't be part of the plan. And there's the number 56 Porsche, part of that heroic scrap in the first now, still running well in the NGT class, but running pretty much on its own now. Probably easier for the driving crew. Blue flag waving. Hazeman has passed Julian Bailey and is pulling away at an enormous rate of knots. So the Lister has definitely got a problem. We're almost at the end of this 500-kilometre race, but Mike Hazeman is galloping away from Julian Bailey, and the Lister running very slowly indeed. He's losing ground to the NGT leader. That was the number 51 car behind. And Michel Neugaert is about to, has indeed already passed the Lister. Is it going to make it to the finish? Is this an engine problem? What is wrong with the Lister? It has pulled out an enormous lead. There were only 3 cars on the same lap. But now, look at this, the car Fort Holland crew, so confident with about half a dozen laps to go, that they've come in for a splash and dash, take no chances with the fuel. They got that much of a lead over the Lister in such a short space of time. Yes, that's enough, let's go. Mike Hazeman anxious to be on with the job, no matter what the stopwatch tells you, he wants to be up there on the track. Neugaert, who ran the first hour so well with Tim Sutton, on his way to collect the win in NGT, but it looks as though we're going to have our second winner of the year in GT, and it's going to be Mike Hazeman. Cross your fingers that there are no problems in the few yards remaining to him. The checkered flag is ready, and after a spirited pursuit of the Lister while they were both running to a fuel consumption strategy, Mike Hazeman has put the hammer down in the closing laps, made that brief trip into the pits for the fuel he needed, carried on and claimed a first win in the GT series. What a fine second place for Wolfgang Kauffmann and Bob Wallach, surviving all the misadventures around them to give Porsche its best result of the season so far. Third place is a result with a capital R for Lister, testament to the strength of the lead the car had got before it hit problems, and the team will definitely be happy with that, especially since championship rivals Belmondo scored a bit of a duck today. Both championship challengers sidelined before the checkered flag, allowing Lister to pull ahead in the drivers' and teams' championship points table. There's a bit of a hiccup to the points table, as you can see from the different scores between the several teammates who share a car. The reason for that is very simple. FIA rules only permit the drivers who race the best wheel to score half points, but that may well be overturned by common agreement among the GT Commission, perhaps even before Silverstone, but meanwhile the official position has to stand, none of which is of any concern to Mike Hazeman as he celebrates that win.
I was a little bit gaining, but I still had to go in the pits, so we were lucky.
Force is still there, and you know, we need a little bit of luck, but this is what you need in racing, and I think we're still, with this old car, we're still in the hunt and the front runners.
Well, the first problem we had were brakes. Funny enough, all we had were rear brakes this race. For some reason it was very difficult to drive the car, and made a few mistakes, especially passing back markers, because they could brake much later than I could. So that was very tricky, and then all of a sudden the gear lever snapped, and actually the gear lever didn't, the linkage broke, and it stuck in second gear, so I had to do the last 9 or 10 laps just rolling around in second gear.
And here are the heroes of the hour, the crews of the two NGT cars, which thrilled the paddock for half an hour of side-by-side drama, finally diffused when the different pit stop timings split them up. But it was proper racing, with everybody on the limit and behaving like gentlemen as well, and the more of that there is, the better. Third place, a good result for points leaders Lara, the tail end of the podium, a fair reward for an interesting strategy only they could understand. But with the same points provisos as in the GT class, they cling on to a narrow lead as we head off to round 4. Bushu still the points leader, but by a smaller margin than before.
Everything is exactly like we planned, and we have a nice win, you know, and I cannot say quite easy, but not so difficult, really. And the car was fantastic. It's a big pleasure to drive here.
Next time out, we're at sunny Silverstone with Lister on home ground as the championship battle hots up.